And good evening, everybody, and welcome to the show. It's a cold, cold night here in Carnegie, Pennsylvania at RPM Studios. But here in the studio with me, at long last, is guitarist extraordinaire from Pittsburgh, Brady Novotny. Brady, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jim. Thanks for having me on.
And as we were saying before, it's been a while. You and I have been talking about doing this for quite a while.
Very long time. Very long time.
But the impetus of this tonight
Yes.
is the fact that you are getting ready to release your first solo record.
That is correct. Very excited about this. And it's been about 18 months into the making. And finally got it all done and packaged and sitting in my house and looking forward to getting it out there. Now,
as we start to talk about the record, I just want to lay out the litany of things that defines Brady Novotny. You're a guitarist.
I am.
You're a Christian musician.
That is true.
And you're very involved with the church, which I do want to talk about.
Yes.
And you're also a therapist.
That is correct.
Now, we started talking about this before the show started recording too, but how would you define the type of therapy that you do? I know that you get into a couple of different areas, but sex therapy being one of them, which I'm sure is going to interest everybody.
Yes, right, sure.
But how did that all come about?
Sure. It's my day job for the most part, and I'm a licensed professional counselor with a certification in sex therapy.
Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting.
So it's a lot of stuff there.
Okay, and now okay? Were you a trained therapist? I mean, was your interest in that type of work? Did that follow or lead your love of music and your
Right.
faith-based activities?
There's a lot there, huh?
There's a lot.
There. But if you're going to be in therapy, I might as well talk about sex.
You might as well.
I guess
it's on everybody's mind, whether they admit it or not.
That's right. So I just had I felt like a certain pull towards it. I heard one guy talk about it in school, and I was like, I'm going to go do that. So I took all the necessary classes and got the certification. But how did I get into it, I guess, is what you were asking? Is that what's how that ties into music?
I mean, obviously, it's something you don't just jump into.
No,
it's something you had to go
all.
to school for.
Right, right.
There was planning, preparation, and obviously there was a desire to go into that field, which led everything. Where did that come from?
Well, I guess I can take it back. When I was a teenager, or even before then, I started playing guitar at the age of 10, and wanted to be the next Eddie Van Halen, and that, I traveled that path for a long while, and then I started working in some churches.
Now, was that was that the Van Halen you mentioned? Okay, was that the record? Was that the band that really set you down the road that said, "Hey"?
I always say Van Halen, but it's really not. Though I love Eddie. I mean, of course, who doesn't? But Randy Rhoads was my biggest. He was the first real guy. When I heard Crazy Train.
Okay, so it wasn't the first Van Halen record like most people. That wasn't that fabulous.
I was the other camp.
Okay.
So I was the Randy Rhoads, Rick Emmett. When I heard,
right. So the first Van Halen was like 78, and Randy was what 80, 81, something like that.
Probably.
Yeah.
Blizzard of Oz. That was the album that really I wanted to. I was in grade school, I think. So. When I heard that,
I was already out of high school.
Oh, right.
Thank you. Yeah.
But I saw him and on the album covers and all that stuff, and with the polka dot guitar and his classical influence, because I was playing classical guitar when I started taking guitar lessons. So I didn't start out on electric. I started out on a classical because that's all I had. My uncle, I inherited his guitar, and it was a classical guitar. So.
Nylon string?
Yep. Nylon string, and I started taking classical lessons, and I wanted.
Now, did you try to play rock guitar style on that at the beginning and have somebody say no,
right. Yeah, I wanted to play with a pick, and my teacher would say no, you got to play with your fingers and all that stuff, which was really good. I really learned a lot. I learned how to read music, and I was really into the classical stuff. And then when Randy Rhoads did D and Diary of the Madman, all those intros and his classical influence. Even though he had the blues influence, I really latched on to his style of playing, and I really, something resonated inside of me with him. And then, of course, and I know we've talked even previously about Rick Emmett and with, I think it's Moonchild. I think that's the song.
Moonchild, yeah.
There's that classical piece in the middle. Oh, that was, I was like, yes, I can play classical guitar and rock. So I was really happy to,
Or wait, was it Wait a minute, was it
yeah.
Moonchild? Was it, or
Or
was it?
Blinding Light Show. Blinding Light Show.
Oh, Blinding Light Show was okay. That was the first song that really turned me on to Triumph.
It was the middle section, right? The classical guitar part in the middle section.
And that by the way, that remains my favorite Triumph song.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I don't know if that was off their first album or their second album, but it was their first American album, which was Just a Game here in America. Mm-hmm. But there was a song called Moonlight Serenade, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that the one I'm thinking of?
There's that Midsummer's Day Dream. Sweet Dream. Something like that. Yeah, I know.
Sorry, Rick.
But he had all these classical pieces even on the Never Surrender.
Oh,
record.
and Suitcase Blues, which was a great jazz song, which I just love that one. But anyway.
And Never Surrender I remember seeing that concert when it came into the Civic Arena as well.
Yeah,
that was amazing. I mean, just his vocals and Rick always set the standard for me as far as being in a band and a vocalist. So no one ever lived up to it. So.
Well, I'll tell you, my experience with them, I went with my brother to see, it was either a free show that they did in Pittsburgh at the Stanley Theater, or it was like one of those 102 shows, $1.02, DVE, the promotion. I had no idea who the band was. I just went to the show.
Yeah.
And they blew me away. And it was Rick that blew me away. First of all, they came into town with nobody knowing who they were, but they had all the lights, all the pyrotechnics. They had, just
big
everything.
Drum set, everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they did a great job. And it was Rick's personality and his versatility. He just had a great stage presence, and he played different styles of guitar, and he was all over the stage. We had the knee pads on. He was doing the Pete Townsend slides, and he was just. It was pretty compelling stuff.
Yeah, I was on. I think it was the Never Surrender, and me and my brother went. My brother took me because I don't know how old I was, but we were on the floor. We had the floor seats, and back in those days, it just was chaos. Going on the floor, and we somehow got to the front of the stage, very close to the front of the stage, and I could have swore it was the moment of when Rick looked out into the crowd, and I think he was staring at me, and I was like, I want to be a guitar player. So that was a pretty. He had no idea who I was, obviously.
No, he told me
that.
He remembers
that. He remembers that in front of 20,000 people. Yeah. So that was. Rick Emmett was a huge influence, and then Randy Rhoads was big. But Eddie, I listened to all the Van Halen records, of course. And with all the stuff that he did, I loved it. I just.
Were you aware of Van Halen when the first record came out, or were you? Because that moment when we heard the finger tapping and we heard Eruption,
right.
It's kind of like the Kennedy assassination. You never forget where you were the first time you heard Eruption.
Right, right. No, my dad won used to call him back in the day. Used to call into the radio station and win albums. Mm-hmm. And my dad won. He would just win these albums like all week, weeks and weeks, and he would get these albums mailed to him. And one of them was the Van Halen 1 album, and I put it on, and I remember listening to Eruption, and I was just getting into guitar. I think and I'm not sure if that's when it came out or if it was later on that year or whatnot. I'm not sure when that would have been, but I do remember putting it on the record player. And
I think Van Halen 1 was 78.
Was it? Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, but I can't remember.
Right.
I should know.
And I remember telling my dad, I turned it up and I was like, Dad, listen to this. And he's like, it just sounds like he's playing fast.
Oh, he was playing fast.
He was. So, but then me and my friends would always listen to all the Van Halen records, growing up. I just happened to be.
But were you kind of like blown away by the technique, the finger tapping thing? Because for most of us, that's the first time we ever heard finger tapping.
I probably didn't know what it was, because I was young, and I just heard the speed, but I don't know why.
Or you probably didn't know that it was that revolutionary for rock guitar. It really,
because I was being turned on to all that at once.
Right, because of your age and everything.
Yeah.
We grew up with, Jimi Hendrix and
Right.
Jimmy Page and Ritchie Blackmore and Jeff Beck, and we
Mhm.
had been through all that before we heard Eddie
Before
Van
that,
Halen.
yeah, right. And I went backwards. So I heard Randy Rhoads and Eddie Van Halen first, and then they would always talk about Eric Clapton and
Sure.
all those people. So then
Sure.
I would go back and listen to them and kind of catch up.
Mhm.
So I guess that's the history of it. And so I guess I was learning classical guitar, and I wanted to study like rock guitar because I wanted to learn how to play Crazy Train and all that stuff. And I remember my first guitar teacher, we came out of the lesson and he told my dad, "Don't bother."
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
And it was a rough thing,
that's
but-
cold.
Yeah, it was. But I don't know where he is. So but I kept going. I mean, it didn't really bother me. I knew what I wanted to do, and so I kept playing and learned the rock, and then I started to get into jazz.
Mm-hmm.
And through that I did some I went to Berkeley for a little bit.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and then
Well, that's good to know because, pretty much everybody I know goes to Berkeley.
right at
so-
some point.
Yep.
And then I then taught at Duquesne, the guitar summer workshops.
Really?
For
Now, how did that come about? I mean, you don't
yeah.
just walk in and start teaching at Duquesne.
No, I was yeah.
That's a really respected music program.
I know.
Here in Pittsburgh.
Well, it is a funny story. I mean, I was teaching at some of the local shops. I was teaching at Swissvale Music back in the day, and at Hollywood Music.
Mm-hmm.
So I started teaching when I was 17. So I was the guitar teacher, and Hollywood was running a guitar competition. That was big back in the 80s or late 80s, early 90s, and I won. Now the guy who was judging it, he says, "Well, we have a problem. Since you teach here, you can't win."
Oh,
You know,
I'm surprised they even let you enter.
yeah, I was too. And you had to be, I think, 18, and they needed to see my driver's license and all that stuff. But, regardless, I won, and then the prize was pulled away from me, so to speak. But then Bill Peirce from Duquesne University was one of the judges.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, we want you to come, and we're doing these summer workshops. We want you to be one of the teachers. So at the age of 18 or 19, I was and one of the main teachers for the rock classes that were held during the summer for 9 years.
They had a specific rock course at Duquesne?
Well, for the summer classes, they had, you could specialize in jazz or rock or blues or something like that. It was open to the general public mainly.
Was it accredited?
No, it was more like like a summer camp that anybody could come in, almost like a Berkeley summer camp.
Mm-hmm.
Those types of things. But I was paid by them to do this. So, but I met a lot of cool guitar players. That's when Wolf Marshall was coming in, Carl Verheyen from Supertramp.
Mm-hmm.
And
When you say coming in, they did a guest teaching spot or?
Yeah, they would come in for the week and teach along, in another
That's cool.
classroom. So I got to meet a lot of kind of cool people, a lot of jazz guitar players, got turned on to, and Robin Ford came in.
Oh, I love Robin Ford.
I mean, so it was just I look forward to that all those summers, and it was just a good time. And the students, I mean, it was well attended. And then, about 9 years, I kind of stepped out of that role and I went in a different direction.
So even though you love the music, you really kind of, right from the very beginning, you started approaching your music from almost an academic standpoint.
Right.
You weren't opposed to spending the time learning it properly, unlike so many other kids, let's face it, who just want to jump in and become a rock star right away without learning the fundamentals and everything. So
I love looking at sheet music. I think it's a work of art. I mean, I just seeing all the notes on the page and sometimes I'll just stare at it,
Oh, yeah.
Violin concertos and stuff, because I played violin for a little bit too. So
it's like a great piece of literature, or the way that some
beautiful.
people these days can look at, programming code.
Right.
and say, this is really elegant. This is
Right.
beautiful. I love your code. You
Right.
know, and I don't get that. But,
Yeah, right.
but sure.
But I was always listening. I was always listening, you know, and the thing about guitar players, because I know you're one too,
Mm-hmm.
you know, is at least for me, you know, I would never really listen to the lyrics of the song. I was always listening to the guitar part.
Yeah, me too.
You know,
I'd have to say
I
so,
couldn't tell you, you know, I still couldn't tell you what the lyrics to Crazy Train really is. I mean, I just know the guitar riffs. And all the Iron Maiden songs I listened to and everything. I was listening to the harmony parts and it's like, what are they doing? What are they doing? So I always kind of analyze that and try to mimic that.
So was that the next leap? You went from Randy Rhoads and then Eddie Van Halen to Rick Emmett and then to
Iron Maiden.
then to Iron Maiden to
Right,
the
Iron
three
Maiden.
guitar attack of
Oh yeah, that's when Metallica and Iron Maiden and
Yeah.
you know, and I was in junior high and we were sort of an Iron Maiden cover band, I think. So, and I would just get together with these guys after school and just learn a bunch of Iron Maiden songs. I mean, it was
So that was pretty quickly. That was the early '80s as well, with the new wave of British heavy metal with Judas Priest and Def
Right.
Leppard and
yeah.
Tigers of Pantang and a whole bunch of other bands.
Mm-hmm.
But so I mean, were you into Judas Priest as well? Because it seemed like everybody.
I mean, yeah, I liked them. I probably liked Iron Maiden more. I was listening to Iron Maiden. I was listening to who else? There was Anthrax. There was Metal Church. There was
Yeah.
Testament. My timeline's probably off there, but I remember getting.
Well, all of those bands kind of started around that time. They didn't really hit their stride until. It was at least some of them until later on,
And they
when the
kinda-
whole Bay Area thrash scene blew up,
Right.
like in like '85, something around that time. Actually, before that, but it was kind of underground, you know.
Mm-hmm.
When did you get turned on to Metallica?
Metallica was Ride the Lightning.
Oh, that's early. That's a
And
second
then
album.
I remember Master of Puppets came out. I got the album and blasting it in my room. So that was very eye-opening, hearing that speed and that much technique. So that really turned me on, because that was even more classical. I mean, it was the bass and the fast and almost like cellos, you know, playing and stuff like that. So it really kind of, I don't know, my ear just went to it, you know. You know, rather than sort of the shuffle blues thing, which there's nothing wrong with it. It's just my ear went in a different direction.
Right.
Yeah. So
Well, you know, with your academic training and everything like that, I am not surprised you went for something a little bit more accomplished.
Right.
You know, required a little bit more technique.
yeah.
So then you kept playing nylon string. So you developed that technique, your finger picking technique,
Right.
along with your flat picking technique.
Yes. Yeah.
So-
You had to, and then I was listening to a lot of classical players, and I bought this cassette. I remember it was, classical guitar, and on the B side of this cassette was flamenco guitar, and that changed my life. When I flipped it over on accident, I think I put it in a tape player on the wrong side, and I was like, "What is this?" Because the pyrotechnics of the flamenco guitar is just insane. We talk about, all these, what rock players did, and don't want to take away from it. But man, if you listen to a good flamenco player, it's incredibly sick.
Well, we all know the Carlos Montoyas and,
Paco,
Paco de Lucia.
Yeah. And I started listening to later on Strunz and Farah, and some of the guys I can't even pronounce their name. But I just know that they were all amazing. I just couldn't get enough. So that changed my. And I remember I called Duquesne. I was like, "Is there a flamenco teacher?" And they're like, "No."
Wow.
Is there anybody in the city who can teach flamenco? They're like, "No." So
nobody. They
nobody couldn't find me anybody, and they said, "Well, there was this one guy who kind of knows like one song, And I was like, "Okay, I'll take the lesson," And so I learned a little bit, but it wasn't until later on when I was teaching at a studio in Harmony, PA, and the guy who owned it, he was from San Francisco, and he learned flamenco from Southern California, down that when he lived down there, and so he taught me for about 2 years the techniques and how to play it, and I mean it's a whole thing of style and metering and just the traditions of it, they're just you almost have to be born into it to really play it well.
Right.
It's just one of those things. But I am a fan of it.
Now, listening to your album, it really harkens towards a different type of guitar player. First of all, it's an instrumental record.
Primarily, yes. Yeah.
Primarily.
Yeah.
So how did you make that leap? How did you decide to go in that direction? And I'm assuming that people like Satriani and people of that became influences of yours as well later on, right?
Yeah, Steve Vai was a big one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Vai learned from Satch.
Right. And in listening to their albums, and though I always loved Joe's melodic stuff because I could hum the record.
Right.
And that was really important, especially when I was just wanting to listen to instrumental music. Vai's was, Passion and Warfare when that came out in 1990 or something like that, around that era. I mean, I wore that thing out to death because of the technique. I love the technique about it. But Joe, I mean, I still listen to Joe's stuff, so I love his playing and I obviously like Vi as well, but Joe, there's just, when you see him and you hear him, it's Joe Satriani.
Absolutely.
It's Joe.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the way that he plays his leads, he does approach them like a melody line.
Vocal line, yeah.
Yeah, for a vocal line from a song. From prior to that, I know that surprises me that you're into the thrash metal bands, because a lot of those guys, even though they played really quickly, weren't really known for their lead playing. They could play in a box. They could do their pentatonics and their double pull-offs and and things like that. But you didn't really have a line that you could walk away humming.
Right.
Unlike one of my favorites was Neil Schon from Journey.
Sure.
Because you could hum his guitar parts, his lead lines, when you walked away. So was it just the sheer aggressiveness of those kind of bands that
it's the testosterone of the teenage.
There you go. Fair enough.
Yeah. And there were some moments in like Master of Puppets when it breaks down.
Oh yeah.
There's that little arpeggio section. That was my favorite part of the song. And there was, whenever they did that harmony lead, from Maiden and stuff like that, it was the melodic section of it. I really was always tuned into that. Like you said, the pentatonic riffs and the scales and all that stuff, playing it really fast and everything. That's great. I studied a lot of my life, building up that speed. It just, you mature as you grow older.
Sure.
And it's not so much about, how fast I could play or anything like that. It's do I want somebody to walk away, humming the melody, or making them feel good, after they hear the song. It became really important to me, and being married to a singer, when I was writing the songs, if she couldn't, one of the tests were, if she couldn't hum the melody line to one of the songs that I wrote, the next day, I trashed it.
Well, take us with. Let's use that as a segue now. Take us into the record.
Sure.
And what brought about your idea to actually do this, to put a band together and actually record this, and to make it an instrumental record. And how did you write the songs? How did you choose them? And tell us a little bit about the album itself.
Sure. This goes back a little bit. I'll take us back to when I started, probably in my late 20s. I went into Christian, the Christian like worship and ministry, and I was working at a couple of churches. And some of these churches, they're so big, they have so many services, and you're just playing constantly. Nothing to show off, but you were playing a lot of music, a lot of rehearsals. And it really wasn't any original. It was, you were playing cover tunes, we're playing worship music, and somebody else wrote, and that's what you did. And I did that for years, and I got burned out. I was kind of done, and I wasn't sure what to do. I felt I was getting older. I was like, I don't know what's going on with the music now. So I got burned out, and I quit. I stopped playing. I put the guitar in the closet. And I went back to school. And that's how I got my master's in psychology, became a therapist and all that stuff. And I tried to sell my gear, all my gear, on Craigslist at one point, and it wouldn't sell. And I have pretty nice boutique gear.
Yeah, well, thank goodness for that.
Right? I mean, I have a Soldano head, the same one Clapton and Eddie uses. It's $3,500 head. Tom Anderson guitar and all this stuff. It was very nice stuff, and I could not sell it. Now, people want to trade with me, but never want to sell. They never want to buy it. And I was like,
too high end for them.
Right. And I was like, I don't want to trade. I'm just gonna have another guitar. So I decided to keep it. I just put it in the closet. And then I had many people.
Well, you must have been pretty. Were you disillusioned with music, or was it just that there was sort of a siren song from the psychological whatever it was that called out to you from that world? And obviously, you had to apply that same sense of discipline towards learning. That field, achieving a master's degree.
Right.
So what was it about that drew you in?
Well, from ministry, I always liked helping people.
Right.
I really did like that end of.
So you were involved in the church prior to getting into psychology formally?
Yes. So, just helping people and, all the things that go along with ministry and stuff I felt like counseling, was more what we call more of a calling into it. And I feel like it was the next step, and probably better for me to grow too as a human, just to kind of, not just be always doing music. I feel that I grew up in school, and as I really learned, about people and how to care for people and empathy and all that stuff, and because I am an introvert by nature, so I listen very well, and I don't need to talk. So even this is not, something I normally do. I'm usually listening. I'm usually
you're doing very well.
Thanks. I'm usually not the one talking. So, so I got into that because I was like, I felt like that was the next step, and for whatever reason, I felt like that music kind of left me for a little bit, kind of died, and then, I don't know how many years ago, it was probably about 2 or 3 years ago, I felt a stirring again. And so I started to play, and it felt like these songs that are on the record kind of dropped in, like almost downloaded to my brain or my heart and kind of came out. A lot of times I would wake up in the middle of the night and have to turn on the lights and go record the melody that was in my head that hasn't been there for a very long time. So it felt more like divine intervention than anything. So then I started to pick up the guitar again, and it took me a year to relearn the chops and to get them back and dust the. Did
you find that the old muscle memory kicked in at some point and it was really still there?
It did. It did. Yeah, it took. At times I'd be playing and be like, oh, that was good, and then other times I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm like 8 again. It took. So to get up and perform again and to play with a band, because when you don't play for a while, your timing goes and just your ear, just to be able to gel and all that stuff. So so I started playing at my church or 2 churches actually, and they're pretty large churches, so you're playing in front of a pretty big audience, so you have to kind of know your stuff, and you can't suck, because they're not going to want you up there. So I learned enough, and got my chops together enough to play that. But then while I was doing that, I was also working on the record and recording it. And I figured if I was going to do it, I wanted to do the electric and the nylon string, because those were my passions. If I could do anything, that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a shredder. I didn't want to be an acoustic artist. I kind of wanted to sort of fuse these rock and flamenco together. Now I know the flamenco players would probably laugh at me, because it's, I'm not traditionally a flamenco player. I mean, I learned a lot of the techniques and I try to incorporate them into the songs with the nylon string and the chord progressions and the rhythmic stuff. And because I do a lot of Roombas in the middle of songs and stuff like that. So, and congas and and stuff like that give a little bit more of a Roomba feel. So
why don't we jump and listen to a track from the album now?
Sure.
And why don't you go ahead and introduce what we're going to listen to, and we'll let everybody hear what we're talking about.
Sure. The first is the title track called Passions Collide, and there's a lot of electric guitar, but there's a couple.
And Passions Collide is your
Colliding
two
of-
worlds, flamenco and rock
Rock,
guitar.
right. Colliding together.
Sure.
Exactly. And it's about that song sort of showcases that. It has a little bit of a nylon string breakdown. Then there's a conga breakdown. So yeah, but you can definitely hear the rock influence, but there's actually a lot of influences in there. There's even jazz chords, and you can hear at the beginning of the record has my sort of Metallica influence, and so there's a lot of going on in that first song. So yeah.
Okay, so let's check out Passions Collide, the title track from the new album by Brady Novotny. And we are back. That was the title track, Passions Collide, from the new album from Brady Novotny, who we have here in the studio.
Right.
Great song, Brady.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Excellent stuff.
Thank you.
So tell us, when the record is going to be available and how people can get their hands on it.
Sure. The record will be available February 14th, as my slogan's saying.
Valentine's Day?
That's right. It's The Sex Therapist is releasing Passions Collide on Valentine's Day,
Oh,
February
how
14th.
convenient.
I know. So tying everything here, what the heck, But it will be available on the website, BradyNovotny.com.
And spell that for people, please.
Sure. Obviously, Brady, Brady, Novotny, Novotny.
BradyNovotny.com.
And of course, I'm my management that's promoting the record. MTSManagementGroup.com.
That's MTS Management Group, all spelled out?
Yes.
.com.
.com.
Okay.
And of course, they can find them on Facebook and
Sure.
everything. So yeah, all the social media
Sure.
stuff.
Now, will it be available as a download and in streaming formats? Physical
Yes.
and stream?
Everything.
Digital download? Okay.
Streaming, everywhere.
So there are CDs available.
Absolutely.
Are you doing vinyl?
No, I think someone told me. I don't know who it was. Was it you? Maybe it was you.
Maybe it was me.
That your vinyl record can only be under 40 minutes.
It depends. It depends. You can put more information on there, but then the sound quality starts to suffer because the grooves are closer together there.
Okay.
Just like the grooves, the sound quality is always better on the outer portion of the record than on the inner portion of the record.
Gotcha.
A lot of people don't know that. But they're actually coming out with, and I laughed when I heard about this the first time, but they're coming out with high definition vinyl now.
Okay.
Which is going to roll out in the next year or two. And the grooves are deeper, and you can get more information packed in.
Nice.
And they're using lasers to make the grooves, and to cut the grooves, and instead of the traditional lathe, that they used to use. So,
but vinyl maybe in the future. That would be nice. Of course. I know that's kind of back in now, and I heard cassettes are coming back in, which is fine.
No. I don't see any need for cassettes.
No, I don't either.
There's a retro kitsch to them, but the sound quality was never that good on cassettes, so I don't see that.
And the management company got me on a compilation CD with a lot of other cool people, 2 songs, Versailles Records, and as soon as that comes out, they're going to send me a bunch of copies that will be available on the website as well.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So, okay, and it will be available for streaming on Spotify, Last.fm, Pandora.
Spotify for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So getting back into, I want to touch upon on the Christian music thing now, because you're very, very actively involved musically.
Yes.
In the Christian scene. How do you view the Christian music scene today? I mean, how has it evolved in what sparked your interest? I mean, is it just a combination of your faith and your love of music?
I believe so. It's not that I wanted to play the guitar by listening to Christian music, and I probably came from a more of a worship standpoint from working at a church. And the worship music's, there's really no virtuoso in worship music. It's more
right. You and I talked about that.
It's just more like the words and the meaning, and you're worshiping God. Even though the singers sometimes, and I'll jab at them, sometimes they do their riffs and go off. But if you do that as a player in some places, I mean, they'll slap your hand for it, So they're kind of
do you think there's room for a virtuoso Christian guitarist?
I hope so.
We're going to find out.
No, that's right.
Yeah, I remember you and I had a conversation about this a while ago, and in the only guy that really comes to mind is Phil Keaggy.
Phil Keaggy, and of course, in the circles that I've, Lincoln Brewster is another one.
Okay.
I don't know if you know him or not.
I'm not familiar
with him. He originally played on Steve Perry's solo record back in the 90s, I think. And I heard him, and he's a great player. And then he went off and did his own thing.
Well, there's a lot of great players that are Christians.
Yes.
One that comes to mind is a guy I was privileged to work with, is Kerry Livgren from the band Kansas.
Yeah, sure.
But an instrumental guitar player, an instrumental music in Christian music, because as you said, what makes it Christian music is mainly the lyrics.
Right.
Otherwise, it's fairly identical to, or is it, to secular music?
Well, I think in the Christian community, they still want the person's heart to be right. I think the person's heart to be in on the same page as theirs, and so I think.
And how do you express that if they don't know you?
Right.
And it's instrumental music.
So, and I think that's I think instrumental music can be interpreted in a lot of different ways, and if you listen to it, you can interpret it however you want. But from at least my perspective and where I'm coming from, I'm trying to take everybody on a journey, and some of the songs are titled Redemption's Cry or Midnight Prayer. I mean, you could tell that there's definitely spiritual overtones, and I am also releasing short videos explaining each song as well, like a 30-second little video that'll be up on YouTube, my YouTube channel and stuff, explaining each song on the record and how I painted it and what I saw.
It's a great idea. Rick Emmett did that on his last solo record as well.
Oh, cool.
I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah. But you worked with Dream Theater.
Yeah.
So now, was there any Christian overtones coming from them? Because a lot of people I talk to, they're always like, there's something there.
There was never anything overtly Christian in their music, at least not that I'm aware of, in the years that I worked with the band. During the early days, when Kevin Moore was in the band, his lyrics, and by the way, Kevin was one of those guys that really made me start paying attention to lyrics. To this day, I think he's one of the most brilliant lyricists I've ever read or heard in music or otherwise. There's references to the Bible and to Christ, Christ in his some of the early Dream Theater songs. But no, I not that I'm aware of. Nothing overtly Christian in their music. Okay. But it was always like more
positive, right?
More positive, yeah. And there's a darker side of Dream Theater too, as I'm sure everybody knows. But no, but they're I'm not going to get into their personal beliefs and things that I may or may not know about the guys in the band. But no, I don't think it really came into the music that strongly. I don't think so.
And that was one of the things about Rick Emmett. Even with Fight the Good Fight.
Very positive, very very anthemic. His music. Yeah,
you can't never surrender.
Yeah,
I don't know what his beliefs are or anything like that, but you could feel that positivity and that you just want to do something good after you listen to it.
Yeah, that was fun. That was a very fun aspect about Triumph in the early days. Something that attracted me to them. I keep coming back to the same word, anthemic. It was just youth anthems, which is kind of what heavy metal is, or hard rock is, or was. In its purest form. Back in the day. But he's great, and I had the opportunity to work with him a couple of years ago on his last solo record in Resolution 9, and that was a lot of fun. And
there was a lot of players on that, wasn't there?
There was a few. He's got his band, which is something I want to get into with you about your project. But he's got his group of guys that he's been working with in the Toronto area. And one of the ideas that we had was to kind of bring in some Toronto all-stars, to perform on the record. And we did get Alex Lifeson from Rush and James Labrie from Dream Theater, who's a Toronto native. And we also got Gil and Mike back from the original Triumph to record on the record. And we approached a couple other guys, and it didn't work out for one reason or the other, like Kim Mitchell from Max Webster, and a couple of people like that. But I think it was a very Canadian product at the end of the day.
Sounds great.
Rick's just wonderful. It's
a great album.
As a fan, to be able to work with him on that record, it was a great honor. Yeah, cool. He's a great guy, and I think the world of him. So.
Yeah.
But now with your record. Do you have a band that is sort of like your band that you're playing with, and are you going to be performing the music live?
Yes, that is the hopes. We do have a core, we have, bass player and drummer, and of course my wife sings on some of it, so and she plays keyboard. The only other two positions is a rhythm guitar player and a percussion. So, I swap those out when but I am going to do a CD release or album release party sometime here in the very near future. Just trying to nail down some dates, And then from there, I hope to do some music festivals over the summer. There's a couple around the city here that I hope to get involved in, and then hopefully
Anything in particular that?
There's the Arts Festival. I'm going to try to get
That'd be
into
great.
that. There's one on the north side. There's the Millvale Music Festival or something.
Oh, yeah.
There's so many
that
have popped up, and they're everywhere. And you just have to get in your music by the deadline, and usually you get a spot to play. So.
I got to imagine they're probably booking acts for the Arts Festival now.
Yes,
and it takes place in the summer.
Yes, the deadline's the end of the month. So
is it?
Yeah. Okay. So hopefully, though.
Did you think about submitting anything to South by Southwest?
Southwest. Where's
South by South. It's the big. It's one of the big meetups. It's in Austin, Texas.
Oh,
and
okay.
Everybody from the independent music community, and it includes film now too. But it's always been sort of like the big event.
Okay.
For new developing music and established artists as well. Now are getting in on the act. It's just quite the event. It's quite the get together, and it's a lot of fun citywide.
Yeah. Okay.
And then there was always the CMJ. Convention festival, whatever.
There's a big one in Milwaukee too. I mean,
in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Well, I know that there's some metal festivals that I was aware of in Milwaukee, but I'm sure they're all over the country.
Yeah. Once summer hits, there's all these music festivals. I'm sure.
It's like the film festivals. Everybody's sponsoring them in their city now, and some of them take off and become very prestigious, and others under the radar.
Yeah.
Until their time comes.
Right. But I mean, the play at the local club down the street, instrumental music's not really going to go over, so I have to look for venues or do a showcase myself, sort of like Triumph did back in the early days. So
yeah.
But I'm working on it, and obviously the goal was to get the record out, and then then start down that path of playing it live and see what happens.
Is there time in your schedule to do this with?
No, but. But we're going to make it because, you know what? I think it's worth it. Invested so much into this, and, it's my baby. So, I got to take care of it, and try to mature it as best as I can.
Your day job as a therapist has got to take up a lot of your time.
It does, but I
mean, do you stick to a 5-day work week, or do you go?
Well, I'm self-employed, so I have my own hours. And, like even the management company set me up for some interviews, I made sure that I don't have any clients at that point. So I can do all these things. But I usually work Monday through Thursday. I usually take Friday, Saturday, Sunday off.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So,
4-day work week.
Yeah. So, I squeeze it in, and, it seems to work well. Plus it gives me a break too. Too much therapy, of just sitting and listening and concentrating. That's one of the downsides of the job is, when you have 7 people lined up and you have to be fresh for every single person that walks in that door, on the hour. So
sure,
and
so you've got to be attentive and alert, and
you can't.
And now, say you would want to go on tour. I know there's been comedic takes on this in movies and things, with movies like Anger Management,
right?
And What About Bob with Bill Murray. Those were hilarious movies, but when you take the therapist away from the patient and the patient's left on their own for any period of time, it can cause problems. I mean, do you worry about that? And do you, obviously no names, but do you have patients that you think, well, it might not be good to be away from them right now?
Yeah, and I know that that's part of Hollywood and what they portray, but
sure.
but in our field, people get out of it, at times, and sometimes you have a therapist for years and then they'll just leave because they don't want to do it anymore. I think for nowadays, what's coming is teletherapy, so you can actually take that. And with teletherapy, I'm allowed to see anybody in my state, but I can be anywhere in the country. So I can still make appointments if I need to travel, and just do it because a lot of people like that. It's convenient for them. They get to just use they're so used to using their phone anyway.
Are you doing that now? I mean, are there non-local patients that you have that you're?
Well, as long as they're in the state of Pennsylvania, yeah.
Because of the licensing and the
so I can see somebody from
insurance,
Philadelphia, but but I could be in if I go on vacation, in Florida or something like that, and somebody needs an appointment or something like that, I can take an hour away and do it by phone.
That's an interesting point. So that you and the patient have to be in Pennsylvania.
I got to be licensed. I can only treat people in the state that I'm licensed.
Right.
So, but I can be anywhere, but they have to be in the state.
I got you.
Yeah, because of the IP address and stuff like that. I don't know how it all works, but there's something about it. So
your wife is a musician also.
Yes.
And she joined you in the band, and
she had no choice.
Why is that?
Well, it's she just had no choice. I was like, "You're going to sing this," and
I don't think
it.
no, and Jen, I don't
Right.
think that you had to drag her kicking and screaming into the fold.
No. She's pretty extroverted and willing to sing at any point. So no, but she did a great job.
She's got one hell of a voice.
Yeah, she does.
She teaches vocal lessons, and she's got her own business too.
She does.
Want to give her a little plug?
She would kill me if I didn't. Upon a Star Travel. She owns her own travel company, and she does travel for people to travel all around the world. She specializes a lot in Disney and stuff like that. So if you see any of us, we're usually traveling at times, but she's actually working, and I'm just enjoying the perk.
So how much of this do you want to, time permitting, how much, in an ideal situation, how much of your life would you like to dedicate, towards your music?
That's a great question. I think I'm working that out.
Right on.
I have an obligation to the people that I'm entrusted to. I do like helping, and I do seminars, and I do speak. I think I would like to get into that more, where I'm talking to more of group of clinicians or workshops or conferences. I'd like to keep doing that and pursuing that more. As is most therapists that keep in this business, that's usually what they do. They kind of progress into speaking and once they get their knowledge and their.
Now, are you allowed to, considering what we just spoke about, are you allowed to give a lecture, say on the internet, being that people may hear it and follow some advice contained within that lecture that are not in the state of Pennsylvania? I mean, how strict are they about things like that? How do they?
Well, it's not real therapy advice. It's more about the therapeutic relationship of.
So as long as it's not one-on-one.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. You can.
That's interesting.
Yeah, you can give a lecture online, or I've done stuff on Facebook, or and it's gone out at a lot of different places. So, and I spoke at my wife's business conference, and that was in Florida. So,
right on.
So it doesn't. I don't think that really matters.
Now you've got obligations to the people at your church as well, because
I volunteer.
Now do you play with the church every weekend?
Probably about 2 to 3 times a month.
So you want to talk about that, where people can see you and?
Yeah, I play at Victory Christian, or no, it used to be called that, Victory Family Church, in Cranberry Township. And
that's not your average church.
No, it's a pretty large one. It's what I guess probably the mega church around the area.
Right.
And we just did a Christmas show, and over the 10 shows, there was 20,000 people that came through the door.
How many?
20,000.
20,000.
Yeah. So, and I opened the show.
How big is this place?
Well, I think it seats right around 2,000 per service. So 10 services.
Oh, I see.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, it looks pretty impressive. I mean, you see the speakers, you see the lights and the LED screens behind you.
I've not been to the church, which I should,
right.
but I've seen video and I've seen photos that have been posted mainly by you.
Yeah.
And it's the stage. It looks like a Trans-Siberian Orchestra performance.
All right. And they had me do one of their tunes to open the show. So, I got to, run around in these lights and,
You mean for Christmas?
For Christmas, yeah, not for worship. But
Sure.
So I got to run around, play behind my head, and do all the theatrics and all that fun stuff. And that was a good time. Really enjoyed that. And, of course, all that is for, to climax to the message, of, why we celebrate Christmas, at least from a Christian perspective. And so it was not only fun to play, and you had to have some chops to play some of those tunes, but it was for a good reason. So
absolutely.
So, and then you got how much exposure, 20,000 people. I mean, you can play down at the bar for 30, or December I played in front of 20,000 people. It's not a bad deal.
That's good bragging rights right there. Yeah. Why don't we jump back into the record now? Why don't you bring us up on another tune, another track from Passions Collide, and why don't you announce the next track?
Sure. It's called Ancient Romance. The theming of it is really, me and my wife were in Italy, and we were touring some of those ancient cities, like Rome and Venice and everything, and just something about the spirit of all that and the romance of it, and all the big churches that we saw, and I mean, some of those things were just ginormous. I mean, they're beautiful.
Oh, absolutely. I've been to some of the great cathedrals in Europe.
Oh my gosh.
You can't do that anymore.
Right.
They don't do that anymore. We've lost that craftsmanship. We've lost that patience. It's transgenerational.
Right.
You don't just, I mean, you pass it along. I mean, there's some of them are not even finished yet.
Yeah.
Like the great ones in Spain. And
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
It's just beautiful. So, I was inspired, so Ancient Romance goes back to like, the couples that I saw at the cafe and all that stuff, but even more so, God and his creation, connecting. And it actually, the song, climaxes to this one part in the song where there's like a little, a duet between the nylon string guitar and the vocal part, which is my wife. So, we kind of have a little dance in the middle of the song, which is kind of, hopefully a little different. And then it kicks back into a little bit more of the distorted part and more of the guitar solos and stuff like that. But yeah, it's some of the chord progressions and stuff like that are very Renaissance, and a lot of some Bach influence and stuff like that from my violin playing and stuff. So I copied a lot of that in this song.
Okay, wonderful. Well, let's check it out again from the Brady Novotny album, Passions Collide. Okay, and that was Ancient Romance by Brady Novotny from the album Passions Collide. So where do we go from here, Brady?
It's a good question.
You better have a plan, buddy.
Right. Like I said, definitely going to focus a lot on promoting the record here from, and looking to do an album release party here in the city. And
do you know where that might be? And obviously, we're about a month away from the release right now.
Right. Right now, I'm planning on the Hard Rock in Pittsburgh.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. So
that'd be great. Would you actually be performing at the party or?
Absolutely.
Oh, good.
Doing the whole record.
Oh, really? That'd be great.
From top to bottom.
No,
So,
that'd be very cool.
So, and probably throw a few covers in there to do some fun stuff, and maybe have some guest guitar players come up and jam
very
and
cool.
stuff like that. Sort of like a G3 thing. And
What covers would you do?
well,
And who would you invite on stage with you?
Right. Well, there is a three-piece horn section that played on one of my tunes, and if they can make it, I definitely would do one or two more cover tunes that had horns in it, like Chicago,
Yeah.
and maybe even a Stevie Wonder tune, just to do some fun stuff.
Oh, that's great.
Sir Duke or something like that.
Yeah. You a Chicago fan?
I mean, yeah, I do like. I'm not heavy into them, but of course,
But yeah, there's something about horns
I know.
too that I just love.
Yeah.
It's just
especially when they're done right.
Well, obviously. Now, what about players? Who would you bring in?
Just actually some of my, one of the guys who taught me guitar.
Mm-hmm.
I think this to celebrate, that whole thing, and we might, do a Deep Purple song or something like that. Because Richie Blackmore was one of my big favorites.
He was one of mine.
And I just, love his playing, and especially on the Perfect Strangers. So.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That was a great record.
Yeah. That's the one I kind of grew up on, I guess.
But that was a whole different phase of Deep Purple.
Right.
Now, you mentioned Van Halen and Randy Rhoads, and the record that changed my life completely forever was Machine Head when it came out. And I had never heard anything like that. It was an incredible, just the impact that it had on me, I can't overemphasize it.
Right.
Just changed my life.
Right, sure.
And that was Richie, and that preceded everything. I became a Led Zeppelin fan after that, and this was all before Van Halen came along.
Right.
But that was a groundbreaking record. So, and you got into now a guy that was influenced by Richie that you also seem to be influenced by listening to the record is Yngwie Malmsteen.
Yeah, I mean,
so it's the whole neoclassical thing.
I guess I like. I mean, yeah, who can't? You can't, not play guitar and not listen to Yngwie.
No, I mean he was another
really
guy
did.
that the sweep picking and the arpeggios and the classical the unashamed classical influence that he put into his music.
Yeah,
that was pretty groundbreaking.
It was, and I've seen him live many times, and he's amazing. Absolutely. I didn't really study a lot of his stuff. I probably studied more of the violin stuff, which he did too. So that's probably where it overlaps a little bit in some of those things.
You mean people like Paganini and or
Oh well, yeah. I mean, the Caprices were. I mean, of course, you listen to all those.
Right.
But and really, I was turned on by Paganini through Steve Vai and Crossroads movie. So that's how I kind of fit into that. And Yngwie, I probably my favorite song by Yngwie is Black Star.
Right.
And even some of the vocal tracks, if you don't remember, I'll never forget, or stuff like that. I mean, some of those songs were really popular for me when I was in like high school and stuff like that. So
to this day, my favorite record that Yngwie, excuse me, my favorite record that Yngwie played on was always the first album by Alcatraz.
Oh yeah, sure.
No Parole from Rock and Roll. I think because he was a little bit more constrained, and he would play within the context of the framework of the song. But when he cut loose, boy, you knew it was him, and
right.
He played like nobody else you had heard before.
No.
But then, of course, with the Rising Force stuff, he was able to really cut loose and do what he wanted to.
Yeah.
And, you know.
But there was something about that Black Star song that was just,
Mm-hmm.
you know, he did that classical intro, and then, I mean, he shredded on it, but not like his other stuff, you know,
Mm-hmm.
which there was definitely a solid melody there, and so I really enjoyed listening to melodies.
Is there any new contemporary artists that you find really compelling? Or
That's a good question. There's a lot of guitar players that I'll go watch. I think some of the internet people like Rick Graham, he's a guy over in England that's just phenomenal. I think his name's, I don't want to say his name wrong, but Nick Johnson, I think. I could be wrong on that.
Nick Johnson?
Yeah, not sure though.
These are people that you just saw, what, on YouTube?
YouTube, you know, that are kind of, I think his name's Sean Ashe, ASHE. He's a great player. Once again, YouTube again, you know, it just seems like YouTube is a place to find all these people that you want to find new guitar players, I guess.
Or even old guitar players for the
Yeah.
first time. One guy that has been around forever that I've never listened to, now he's one of my favorite guitar players, is Tommy Emmanuel.
Oh, sure.
It's just incredible. There's nothing the guy can't play. Just fantastic.
Right. And I think you know somebody that's, you know, he's a big guitar player, but he's actually a distant relative of mine. You know, Zach.
Oh, yeah.
Zach, the guitar player.
Yeah, Zach Wiesinger, guitar Zach.
Yeah.
Who's going to be coming in to do the show eventually?
Okay.
if we can actually throw a lasso around him and, you know, and get him to actually come in. But yeah, he's quite the character.
Yeah.
No, he's great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Just completely unbridled. I mean, just he's off the hook
Right.
as
yeah.
a guitarist. Yeah, I keep forgetting you guys are related. Yeah.
Distant. I don't even think he knows it. But my dad told me.
Maybe bring him down. Why don't we
Yeah.
have you in on the show
That's
when he
right.
comes in, and then we have him down down at the Hard Rock.
That's right.
And he'll be jumping off the tables, and
Right.
I don't know if you've ever seen any of his
Yeah.
his
I've seen-
videos
yeah.
at
a couple, yeah.
the casino and stuff where he's running around and
Of course.
wreaking havoc upon the place. But
Got
yeah,
to do.
very cool. So onward and in upward with you. Give us just a brief overview of what you're going to be, you know, hopefully up to, you know, over the next couple of months after the release of the record, and what we can expect from Brady Novotny.
Right. A lot of, like I said, a lot of promoting it, a lot of hopefully interviews. Hopefully get some reviews back, all the fun stuff of that. And I'm really hoping to perform this, this spring and summer at a lot of the festivals around the city, and wherever else we can go. You know, so willing to play anywhere. It's just a matter of we can get there.
Yeah, you're not going to be doing more of the traditional rock club things, but you're going to be looking for more of alternative type.
I believe
of venues.
so. I believe so. You know, and maybe even some church venues. You know,
Yeah,
who knows?
I would think so. That would be the next
Hopefully they would.
logical.
Hopefully they will accept it and get on board. That would be nice.
Okay.
But whatever opportunities open up, we'll definitely go after them for sure. You know, it's hard when you're doing instrumental music. Where do you play? You know, that's a tough one. But I have noticed there's a lot of people starting to surface now. I mean, with Tony McAlpine coming to Club Cafe.
Yeah,
down
he's
the
going to be
road.
coming in.
I mean, and Buckethead came to Jurgles, and so there's a lot of people that are doing it. I just got to figure out how. That's the other part.
Well, I'm sure that you will. Tell us again where people can tune in to check out the music and to buy the music.
Website, bradynovotny.com. Of course, my management, mtsmanagement.com, managementgroup.com. And, of course, I'll have it all up on social media stuff and Facebook, Instagram. Brady Novotny Music is the Facebook page.
Okay.
And yeah. But
And we
mainly-
can provide links on the YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Mainly through my website, though. I'm going to try to keep funneled that direction, so there's not 20 different places you can get it. I'm sure it's going to be uploaded to like iTunes and all that other fun stuff, but I'm hoping to funnel it at least at the beginning through my website, and then I'll branch out from there.
Okay. And once again, the album is Passions Collide. and will be available February 14th.
That's right, Valentine's Day.
Valentine's Day, and check us out Valentine's Day for the sex therapist / Christian / instrumental guitar player virtuoso, Mr. Brady Novotny. Brady, thanks so much for coming in
Thanks, Jim.
and sharing with us.
I appreciate it, man.
Have a great night.
You too.